Okay, thank you very much. Now, can I invite our three speakers to join us on stage for a panel? I think you've been holding back the questions. I see some of these things being collated and ranked, so we'll put these to the speakers. Let's jump right into it. Now, instead of reading out the actual question word for word, because some of the questions are fairly similar, I'm thinking that I'll probably group some of the questions with a similar theme and then just put it to our panelists. Now, we talked about transformation and how it provides that potential for our customers and how it impacts our staff and our volunteers and so on. One group of questions relates to our customers, the people who we want to transform a service delivery to. When we want to make a change, sometimes not every segment of customers or users are able to use these new technologies or interfaces so easily. For example, digital technology. So in planning for this sort of transformation, how do we make sure that the needs of different customer segments with the same job to be done, how do we make sure that they are still supported, and how do we plan our resources and allocation? Maybe Mr. Su.
Okay, so PSB is 140 years old in Singapore. So obviously we have the lion's share of the aging population in Singapore. So it's a fact, and we are not running away from it, right? So in the course of the whole digital transformation that we are doing, essentially there are two parts of the population that we need to sort of take care of. So there's a, broadly say, 80-20 rule. So 20% are those truly are in the age where they cannot handle electronic banking independently. So when we go through that kind of cycle, we will have to set up a specific sort of training program in locations where we can partner with some of these like homes and whatever not in the neighborhood to sort of educate them and bring them through. At times, we may also set up specific like banking days or banking hours where we will have representation from the bank in all these locations to sort of help them to do that. But we also need to acknowledge that there eventually will be a group that cannot do it. Okay, so and that's where the supplementary help is very, very important. The family members will then need to bridge this divide, where eventually, for example, cash may not exist anymore in Singapore, but it will take a while. So the idea is not to say that we remove cash totally, but is to reduce where appropriate. So that for specific businesses where there's still the patronage are still coming from the elderlies and all that, we need to be able to cater for that. So it is a sort of an inclusive kind of strategy that we are doing to make sure that when we bring the entire country into this whole digital platform, we need to bring them along. Now, this is also being worked on at the national level. So DBS Bank is also being roped in to work on a digital readiness for the country. And that will also entail some of this program that needs to address some of these smaller groups of population in Singapore.
Because we certainly have similar concerns when we want to transform care delivery. Some people will take to this mobile things very well. Some of our older patients will say, I'm really frightened by these things. You know. So I bought my parents' tablets, and the first question was, where's the manual? There's no manual. So it'll take some.
Can I quickly add a perspective? Great question, firstly. If you take Facebook as a company, right, we have about 2.2 billion people using. Yeah. So like in my case, I'm on Facebook, my mother's on Facebook, my daughter just turned 13, she's on Facebook and stalking me there. But so I think I agree with Jeremy, you have to cater to everybody.
Yes.
But I also feel there's one segment that will continuously help you push the envelope and get better.
Right.
And listening, spending extra time and attention listening to the needs, the latent needs of that segment as well, I think is really critical. Because ultimately you do want to get better faster. And so like there'll always be one segment of customers, I think, that push you a lot more to get there compared to to others.
So they can help us move forward faster, and maybe they'll help us to test our innovators group. But in terms of our eventual logistics, how do we maintain parallel capabilities, and does that consume resources and things like that? So,
okay, so I mean, sort of under my care, I have close to like 5,000 people. So a large percentage of them are in the physical branch environment. So, which means to say the whole digital revolution or evolution that's taking place, right, will ultimately impact their job. So their job could be displaced, the role that they are performing can also be displaced. So we have developed programs to train them, transform them, and in one of those programs we'll be helping the rest, sort of the same demographics, customers of the same demographic to go digital. Because these customers, for reasons of being a community folks, they like to congregate at branches because that's where they sort of spend their time. So if you think about it, 70, 60, going 70, 80, actually they don't have a lot of activities. So they like to go through the routine, they bring the passbook, they do a sort of a check and do an update, maybe withdraw $10, $20 for the breakfast or lunch. So and that's where we are training a pretty senior group of, from an age perspective, a workforce, to say this is where you can value add and at the same time transform and change your role. So from a functional kind of administrative work to one where you interact with people and there's a little bit of coaching element in there. And that's where we think as a nation we can bring everyone along in the journey.
Okay.
Coming from, if I'm still with my previous sector, which is the IT sector, I actually don't see that as an issue, but having been with the social service sector, at least for my sector now, the way we look at it is that there are still a lot of people surviving on Excel and stuff like that on a day-to-day basis. So when it comes to technology, they're even at the Excel level, not to talk about platform and stuff like that. So what we are trying to do right now is to be able to identify champion and move along with the champions. And that seems to be working for the social service sector, which is carrying a lot of baggage for that matter. And I suppose it's a process. It's a process, and the more we want to speed up the process, unless we are prepared to let people drop out, but otherwise the whole process could be very painful and potentially counterproductive.
Yeah, one example I can give, one of the ministers sort of picked up the potential application of the wearable for elderlies. So we are in fact have commenced and sort of an experiment in his constituency to say how do we use wearable technology and linked it, to working adults for the use of their sort of aged parents.
Okay. Yes.
I can imagine my wife controlling my expenses when I grow old. Okay? But the point with the digitization or digital revolution of the country, the social space, the commercial space, the workplace space, how do you protect? I mean, one concern, and I think it's a matter of ethics, is my privacy. My privacy, and how do you do this? You including my own medical records, for example, we saw it on the first page. So the concern is how do you manage privacy issues? How would anyone manage privacy issues? I saw this movie called The Circle. I don't know whether you saw that.
Yes.
Okay.
I
Tom Hanks. Yeah.
So, privacy issues. We have so much big data and. Would you like to?
Yeah, look, it's
wary of Facebook.
It's a super important topic, right? Can't trivialize it. It's more critical than ever. I think companies like us, we continue to invest in it. Ultimately, the control has to be with the user or the consumer. And the user or the consumer has the choice, how much I share and where, and do I have the control to be able to dial that up or down depending on my needs. So giving the user that control is super critical. Like we do also things like third-party audits. We do a lot of consumer research. We do a lot of stuff around user education, like working with government organizations, making sure we comply with the laws of the country, etc., to make sure that privacy, security, etc., are addressed and people really feel comfortable that they have the right level of control. So it's a great question, and I think in today's times a really critical topic that we need to have conversations about.
I think as we forge into this big data thing, this is something that we deal with as a society, not just as healthcare or some sectors. Now, could I jump into the other group of questions? We talked about customer segments and different needs. Now, as we transform, we talk about disruption. In disruption, there will be more people who, from our staff group, there will be people who win more than others. Now, how do you manage the sentiment? I think it was alluded to in some of the presentations that some of the staff groups who win less than others might not participate so actively and so on. How do we manage those sentiments and the pace of change within our organizations when we transform? Would anybody like to?
Okay, let me try. Okay, so in the context when we talk about customers' journey, so what's equally important to make that happen is that we have the same and equal amount of focus on the employee's journey. So these two goes hand in hand. If you do not focus on the employee's journey, you will never get the customer's journey right to begin with. So these two cannot be sort of separated. So that's what we uncovered during so far, okay, in our journey. So when we do that, we have to integrate all this into the training program. So there will be a lot of workshops being set up. They will have to learn some of these techniques that we are applying. And typically, staff that's been in the sort of kind of old traditional structure, they will feel very uncomfortable when they move on to an agile environment. So where they're being taken out to perform a squat or something like that. Now, so all this eventually will become the norm. And over time, they will begin to appreciate, that this is actually good for them, rather than keep, working the same.
They tend to defend their current way of doing things. So, Ramesh, you are transforming workplaces.
Yeah, look, I think that was a great comment Jeremy made about the employee journey and understanding that. A couple of things I will add, just like anything else, there is an innovation adoption curve at work. So there'll always be, even from a people standpoint, innovators, early adopters, early majority, etc. So how do you enlist the support of the innovators and early adopters in your company and use them as change agents to influence the rest of the organization? I think that's important. I remember Dr. So, the CEO of Tan Tock Seng Hospital, when he came and shared their workplace journey with a healthcare audience. I mean, he shared a very interesting insight. He said that the oldest employee at TTSH has been with the hospital for 60 years, and the youngest was, I think, 18 years old. And so it is hard, and some people will embrace it quickly. Some people will require support and training and handholding to get there. What we've seen is really important is the what's in it for me piece. When people understand how this can help them as individuals in their role, you're then emotionally enlisting their commitment to change. And that makes a huge difference in how quickly they come onto the platform. We've also seen some organizations make it voluntary so that it doesn't look forced, it doesn't look like one more initiative from headquarters that's being pushed onto people. So when you make it voluntary, then it's almost like you're switching that balance where it's me asking for it rather than me being told to do something, and that can play a role as well in terms of how much I feel I want to get onto a new platform.
Yeah, my take is this, and it somehow rather echo what was mentioned by the two gentlemen. First will be KPI. In other words, it's not a hard KPI, but rather to let them see the relevance to their work. I think that is very important. And the other part, which is also to reinforce this whole idea about KPI, is really about storytelling. Making the relevance, the doctor's example that you mentioned, is a form of storytelling. But by doing that in a very tactful and strategic manner, you are able to bring them on board this very difficult journey to some who might actually see less relevance, etc. So how do we link the relevance? I think at the leadership level, that one is something that is very important in my opinion.
So thank you. I think that's some of the challenges we face internally when we want to make change. Like you said, if the volunteers can do the jobs almost for free, then what happens to the employees? Okay, I think, as a healthcare industry, we are very inspired by all the things that you are showing us now. If you take an industry perspective, well, you're also like our customers, industry-wise now. If I were to invite...
Hopefully not too often.
Yeah, unwilling customers, right? So if I were to invite each of you to share your vision, about this future of healthcare delivery, you've shown us many inspiring examples from your industry perspective now. What would future of healthcare delivery be like? How can it be better? So if you could just share.
That was a tough one. Okay, what I can think of, again, applying what I learned in banking, is if we anchor everything on the customer, and the initiative that the government is leading around my info and all that, I think if the healthcare industry can also leverage on that to centrally sort of hold the patients/customer records relating to their health, I think that possibly could improve the whole productivity in this sector. Yeah.
Okay.
Just for me personally, and this is just a personal view, I feel like the healthcare industry is reasonably efficient, but I don't know whether it's really customer obsessed. And like for example, every time I go back for a checkup, why do I need to take all my previous reports? Or when I go from one hospital to another, if I'm traveling, I have to provide the whole context of a condition that I'm going through and all the background and so on. It's hard. I remember when my aunt was hospitalized, it was just getting the bill out and getting all the operational processes done was a nightmare. So I feel like there's, when you start really getting customer obsessed and leveraging, obviously keeping privacy, etc. in mind, but thinking about it from the standpoint of the customer and how you can make it really efficient for a customer, I think there's potential to really transform. When I go to a hospital, I don't want to wait for anything. I just want to get in, get stuff done, and get out, and that's it. So I feel like there's definitely room. As a consumer, I feel there's definitely room to get better.
And from a different industry perspective, you guys are solving those problems so seamlessly for your customers. Now, what has healthcare got to do to learn from each of these examples to also do? Because I think eventually our customers or our patients will have these expectations as part of societal experience. And as an industry, we can't fall too far behind. Right? So,
well, for me, I think the two sectors are related, social service and healthcare. We handle human for that matter. So I think personally from me, I think I fully agree with Ramesh that the human-centric, the customer-centric aspect, probably in my personal wish is probably the human touch, which we are observing that, or at least we are getting feedback from the service users in our sector, that they are seeing doctors as a form to solve a problem, just a mean to solving a problem, but I thought a bit of human touch.
So sorry, if I can just
yes, please.
And the other thing for me is the proactive versus reactive piece. You often end up going to fix an issue, whereas on the preventive medicine side, I feel like there's so much more that can be done. The other thing I find, and again, like, apologies if I don't know enough of this to speak. I'm speaking as a consumer, but like I find like often doctors have this very narrow, I'm an expert in my field. And it's almost like I'm fixing this issue for you rather than I'm making you better or I'm restoring the balance of your body, if you get what I mean. And I feel like the whole industry is more tilted towards like, it's like a person with a hammer looking for the nail, right? So I'm going to fix this issue. You know, I'm an oncologist, I'm going to fix this, as opposed to like, what am I doing to really restore your health from a longer term standpoint? And I feel like there's just so much more that can be done on that.
To flip our view towards what is the best for the user at the end, not just what we want to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's a recurrent message from all of you, to start with the customer's view first and then see how we can help the customer. Okay, I think we've had a very, very good discussion. It's red, so, and we've been holding you back for your tea time, but for very, very good reasons. Could we join us together in thanking our speakers in our usual way for an excellent session?